around 19 years old, that's the first time I joined a church. I was so nervous. I wasn't sure, number one, if they accepted Jewish people, if Jewish people were allowed. It took me time to feel comfortable. I used to literally walk in and just quickly walk out. I didn't want to talk to anyone. October 7th happened. The pastor went on the pulpit and said that God has always had a way of punishing Israel for their crimes against neighboring countries. I was devastated. I didn't know that this was not normal. And so I spoke with the pastor. He said, "I'm really sorry you felt offended. There was no change."
Caroline, could you tell me about the most personal encounter with Jesus?
I'd say the most intimate encounter that I've ever had with Jesus, I was actually in temple with my grandparents. A lot of Jewish people, they tend to tell me, you didn't give Judaism a chance, you're just so quick to brush it off. So I decided that I'm going to start attending temple with my grandparents. This was probably like one summer ago, maybe 2 summers ago. I was just really low. And I started to question, am I feeling this way because God is punishing me? Is it possible that God is trying to tell me that I'm worshiping an idol? Like, is Jesus an idol? And I really wanted to test that. And I figured that if Jesus is really who he says he is, there wouldn't be anything wrong with testing that. So I went to temple and we were going through the songs and everything. And my Hebrew is not proficient in the slightest. But for whatever reason, I can read like just the tiniest bit. So we're reading through it in Hebrew and I saw the word Yeshua. And I was like, Yeshua? Like, that's Jesus. Like, what is Jesus doing in temple? And prior to us starting that, I remember just standing there and saying to God, like, God, will you please reveal to me, like, if I'm worshiping an idol? Like, is this idol worship? And we start singing and I see Yeshua and I pulled my phone out. My grandma starts like yelling at me, she's like, why is your phone out? Temple. And I looked it up and I found out that Yeshua meant salvation.
Yeah.
And then from then on, I have never questioned if Yeshua was the Messiah. And that was probably the most affirming moment in my life as a follower of Jesus.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was
that
cool.
Wow. I mean, there's a few things that jump out at me from that experience. One is just that I've had that moment a lot of times too of reading through liturgy, Jewish liturgy, and every time the word salvation is used, it's actually the word Yeshua. And if you know Yeshua as Jesus, then you realize that our people are reciting prayers about Yeshua in synagogues everywhere around the world every single week, and how close they are to knowing Yeshua, the Messiah. The other thing I really loved about what you shared is just that you had doubts. It wasn't just like one day everything was perfect and you had perfect faith and went from there. You had doubts, you tested, you asked God to confirm things for you. And that's, I think, really normal. So how did you first hear about faith in Jesus?
So this is where it gets complicated. I grew up in a Christian home. My mother is fully Jewish. My father is mixed with like Spanish and Portuguese and stuff like that. And a lot of like those Mediterranean people, they tend to be Catholic growing up. So my father was religiously Catholic, but he was an atheist. My mother was very Reformed Jewish. So when they got married, they became Christians. I do consider myself to be a first generation Christian. I wouldn't say that how I grew up really modeled the love of Jesus. We didn't go to church regularly, no Bible studies. I didn't know anything. I didn't know about Bible. I didn't know what it was to be a part of a church. I was afraid to go into churches. I didn't know if I would be accepted or welcomed. I didn't have a good home life. So when I was 17, I moved to California and I have a very big Jewish family. And I was gifted a Bible when I was 14. And so I would do Bible studies in my room at their house. And they're like, what are you doing? They're like, you're a little Jewish girl. Like, they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And so simultaneously, while I was learning who Jesus was and what following Jesus really was, I started to learn about my Jewish identity. And so they just kind of bloomed together, Yeah.
That's amazing. In your home, you're saying it was sort of like culturally Christian, which a lot of people are. So it's not necessarily like they're living active faith, but then something drew you to start studying the Bible for yourself. So what do you think that was that pulled you to that?
So I had a really bad home life. My father actually has schizophrenia. So
Oh, wow.
his version of Christianity was the worst parts. Like growing up, the way I see following Jesus now is nowhere near like what I grew up witnessing Christianity. Like my father was physically abusive, verbally abusive. He's a very violent man. And he gave us a false version of what it meant to follow Jesus. And my mother truthfully didn't really know much.
Yeah.
Like I knew she loved Jesus. She believed in Jesus, but the way it was modeled in the home, it was not what I know following Jesus is to be now. I always wanted Jesus. I couldn't explain it. I just really always did. Like my parents wouldn't let me go to church. They didn't want to take me. They didn't want to be a part of a church, but I started to learn about Jesus through YouTube. I had a teen study Bible and YouTube, and I would go in my bedroom, close the door. I would do these Bible studies every single day. And then by the time I was 17 and I moved here, that need for Jesus just intensified. It went from being like, I had such a childlike wonder and desire for him to be, okay, I can't keep going like this. I need something. And I did try Judaism. I saw what Judaism was. And the answer was so resounding to me that it was Jesus, and it was, following Jesus as a Jewish person.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's like very personal, but it's sadly, not uncommon. A lot of people have had, terrible experiences like that with their immediate family. And it's so encouraging to see like the hope and the joy that you have today.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering who you saw yourself as before Jesus and who you are now.
Before, it was like, I don't think I even saw myself. I felt like I was drowning all the time. Like I felt like I was drowning. I just needed help. And I remember when I was like 14, 15, I would go on YouTube and I'd see these girls who were preaching the message of Jesus, and they just looked so happy and so filled with joy. And all I knew is that like, I just want to be like that. Like that's all I knew. And then when I moved here, I sunk even lower and I started just heading in a really bad direction. And then as I got older, I started to realize like, I want to be like a woman. And when I say woman, I mean like a woman who loves Jesus, who is kind and gentle and loving. And I want people to see the spirit inside of me. And I went from just like being like, I'm drowning and I can't get out and I don't know what to do, to now understanding like who Jesus is, how he has saved me. And then now like who I want to become and how I want to spread his word,
Yeah, that's incredible. It's actually really interesting how people on YouTube influenced you and you saw their faith and testimony, and that's what we're doing now. And also you have a TikTok channel where you share your faith. So how did you get the vision for that?
Oh my gosh. So this kind of goes into a broader story, but I actually grew up in the South. And there's a lot of European people in the South. And bear with me, I'm going somewhere with this. I grew up with people who would frequently look at me and make comments about my hair or my eyes or my skin tone. People would pick up my hair like it was a piece of trash. They would tell me how ugly it was, how terrible it looked. They would tell me, your eyes are pretty, but this girl has really beautiful blue eyes and they're beautiful. I had friends who would push me and say, you're green, because I had olive skin,
What?
Yeah. And I had friends who I'd go sleep over at their house and they wouldn't let me sit on their beds because I was dirty. I couldn't understand
That is horrible.
why people didn't see me like them. As I got older, I started to realize like, okay, my mother's dark. She does not look like she was born and raised in America. People would ask me like, where are you from? And I'd be like, oh, I'm half Jewish. And they didn't understand. And they'd see my mom and they'd be like, is she from here? Like, is she here legally? And I would say, I'm half Jewish. And people were like, no, that's a religion. Like, what are you? I'm like, no, like it's an ethno-religion, meaning it's both an ethnicity and a religion.
Yeah.
As I got older and I moved to California, I experienced discrimination in a whole new way. For the first time in my life, people started to tell me I was pretty, which I never heard before a day in my life. But people would say, where are you from? And I'd say, I'm half Jewish. And they understood. But immediately, I kind of got hit with a lot of stereotypes. oh, well, I thought Jews are supposed to be this way or that way, you know. I started to hear really insensitive comment. And I started to realize, like, okay, in the South, I dealt with prejudice. Here in California, I'm dealing with a lot of ignorance, a lot of really ignorant comments.
Wow.
And I started a TikTok account because when I was, let's see, around 19 years old, that's the first time I joined a church. I was so nervous to come to church. I was so nervous. I wasn't sure, number one, if they accepted Jewish people, if Jewish people were allowed. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome considering the kind of background that I came from. I really liked the church. It took me time to feel comfortable. I used to literally walk in and just quickly walk out. I didn't want to talk to anyone. About 2.5 years later, you know, I was still at the same church. October 7th happened. The pastor went on the pulpit and said that God has always had a way of punishing Israel for their crimes against neighboring countries. He used a language, whether justified or unjustified. Well, they came out with a statement calling us colonizers and settlers, how this attack was a culmination of an ongoing Palestinian struggle. I was devastated, and I was actually serving on kids ministry at the time. In order to serve to the extent that I was, because I was on leadership, I had to be a member of the church. I didn't know anything about being a part of churches. Like, I didn't know that this was not normal. I didn't know that this was inappropriate, that a pastor should not be, number one, speaking that way about Jewish people or anyone in general. All I knew is I reached out to the person that was working at the church and I said, hey, I'm gonna have to step down from leadership. I cannot be a part of a church if this is what they believe.
Yeah.
And so I spoke with the pastor. He said, I'm really sorry you felt offended. There was no change. After that, after just this culmination of growing up in the South, people not understanding the way I look and it being considered like not the norm, maybe ugly, to moving to California, you know, encountering people who don't even know what Jewish people look like, you know, saying things like, well, I thought you were supposed to be whiter. I thought you were supposed to be darker. I've never met a Jew before, but you're not what I thought they'd look like. Then the whole thing with my pastor, I started to realize like there's so much misinformation being spread online. Specifically what I noticed, so much hateful and demonic rhetoric being spread about Jewish people. After October 7th, that I was like, I cannot sit by and watch this anymore because everything that is being said is so false. So I started the account to debunk a lot of lies and narratives that people had been spreading about Jewish people and kind of spread awareness about Jewish people through the lens of somebody who is a follower of Jesus. So I feel like my perspective is different than the average Jewish person because I also kind of point it back to Christianity and Jesus and his physical ministry. But I talked about a lot of things as well, so it's not just that.
Well, and we're going to link to your channel so people can check it out and follow you. And what you're doing is exactly God's heart, to see like Jewish people and non-Jewish people come together and as one family. And so that separation, that division is something that we, you know, fight against.
Yeah.
And I thought what you said about the first time you went to church was very interesting. When you said, I didn't even know if Jewish people were allowed.
Yeah.
And so I want to reflect on that a little bit because I think there could be people watching that are wondering that. If you're Jewish and you're watching, I want to encourage you that there are some churches, it's true, where you find anti-Semitism or you find, you know, like you said, just ignorance. But my experience has been that the majority of Christian churches love the Jewish people and love Israel and want to embrace Jewish people as part of the family that they're also part of as following the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so I would encourage you, even if you've had 1 or 2 bad experiences, not to give up because there are fantastic churches out there. And if you're struggling to find one, just reach out to Jews for Jesus and we will connect you with one. And if you are Christian, I want to encourage you to realize that if you have a Jewish friend and maybe you ask them, do you want to come to church with me? Or would you like to join me for something? And they say, oh no, I'm Jewish. I think a lot of Christians just take that as in like, don't talk to me about religion, which sometimes people mean it that way. But sometimes people genuinely just might think, I'm not welcomed in that space. Churches like don't want Jewish people there. They think we killed their God, we killed Christ. And so don't give up. If you've invited someone to church and they've said, no, I'm Jewish, I don't want to come, you might have to actually have conversations with them about why they feel that way. And you might be surprised to realize that they're surprised that they would be welcome in your faith community. So, okay, Caroline, you have your TikTok, but tell us what else do you do? Do you do that full time?
I don't. I actually am in school. I'm in my last year of my counseling undergrad, but I really want to get a master's in biblical counseling.
Amazing.
So the TikTok is just a side quest. Like, I love it so much. Like, it is so meaningful to me because not only am I spreading truth, I'm also learning so much.
Yeah.
I adore that. I would love to do it more for sure. But a lot of my favorite topics take so long to study and learn. So unfortunately, I can't give as much time and attention to it as I would like to. Yeah.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about social media is you can take people on that journey with you. So you're learning and you can bring them along. You don't have to be the expert yet, although one day maybe you will be the biblical expert and people will have tracked with you for that journey, which is so exciting. So is there anything else, any other like core turning points or experiences or doubts or struggles that you had that maybe somebody would relate to that we could share about?
I feel so deeply about being a Jewish follower of Jesus. And I would love to share that just because I don't think people understand, like, I really became a follower of Jesus the exact same time I was learning about my Jewishness. And a lot of people tell me, you're not Jewish anymore. Like, but number one, I cannot change my blood. It's there. Number two, like, Christianity is so Jewish. Like, the more I learn about it, the more I'm truly mind blown. Like, some recent discoveries, like Yeshua's physical ministry on this earth, like, first to the Jew and then to the Gentile. I mean, of course, like, God no longer sees Jew nor Gentile, but I couldn't get over, like, how amazing that was to see, like, his heart for the Jewish people, but just learning how Jewish his ministry was. He was born a Jew, he lived as a Jew, and he died as a Jew. My whole life I kind of grew up assuming, Jesus was a Christian. No, Jesus was not a Christian. The term Christian was coined, I believe, after his physical ministry on this earth. It was coined by the non-Jewish followers of Jesus in Antioch, which I believe is around the area of Turkey. The first followers of Jesus were called Nazarene Jews. They were still considered to be Jewish, but just a different sect as they worshiped Jesus of Nazareth. So this has been something that I've actively learned how to not only to understand within myself, but to communicate to my very, very, very Jewish family.
Yeah.
When they're like, what are you doing? Because they grew up with a lot of poor experiences with Christians to the point where they cannot understand why I would ever want to.
Yeah.
And I always say, I don't come to church for people, I come for Yeshua. If Yeshua were not who he said he was, then I wouldn't be attending church. I go simply because he is the Messiah, and I feel so strongly about that. But my Jewishness and my belief in Jesus goes hand in hand. Like, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's together, both in unison.
Yeah.
So
it's cool as Jewish believers that we get to have our heritage and our culture and have like this amazing connection with other Jewish believers, but then we also get to be part of this global diverse body of Messiah, which I love. And it's kind of, it's one big family, right? And so you show up for your family, whether they're unhealthy or not, right? Your family might be very unhealthy. Lots of us have unhealthy families. No one has a perfect family, and we still show up for Thanksgiving or whatever it is, right? So I think there's some of that. Like, we show up to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the Lord, and we know that things aren't always healthy and perfect in the church, but we're there for Yeshua. We're there to honor him and serve his people, and then we get blessed when there are good, wonderful relationships and communities. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story, and I can't wait to see how your TikTok channel evolves as you continue on this path.
thank you so much.
Thank you also for watching, for subscribing, and I want you to check out Caroline's channel and track with her and pray for her that God would work through her life and her testimony in a powerful way. Thank you so much, and share this video so we can reach more people with the good news that Jesus is the Jewish Messiah.